You are now listening to Testimonies with Terry.
Hi everybody, this is David and my wife Melody coming at you to answer some questions. First of all, we just wanted to say thank you so much. If you're watching this, you probably listened to our Testimonies with Terry podcast that came out last week. We really just want to say thank you for listening to our story, and thank you to those that submitted some questions. So we just wanted to come on really quickly and candidly answer some of those questions and just say thank you for all of your support and your prayer and for your encouragement. So without further ado, I did want to say one thing. If you have not listened to our podcast or any of the Testimonies with Terry, it is an awesome podcast. So wherever you find podcasts, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, social media, you can find Testimonies with Terry, and it's really an amazing job that he does. So check that out, and if you haven't listened to ours, you're more than welcome to. But we'll jump into some questions, and that'll be it.
Yeah, so the first question that you guys asked us was, I'll just read the question for you, but it says, I'm believing with you that you will have children of your own at some point, but I'm wondering if you guys have ever thought of looking into adoption. So thank you for that question. I will say, just to start, thank you for believing with us. We really appreciate that. And also thank you for listening to our episode, and hopefully you were encouraged by it. But this is a question we have been asked before, so this is not a new question for us, but I'll actually let David answer this question.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, good question, and we do think adoption is an amazing thing, an amazing tool that changes families and lives forever, and we have thought about it. I can just answer clearly, at this point in our lives, we don't have peace about adopting right now. That's not to say that it won't be in our future, but right now we believe, as we shared in our podcast, that God has given us specific words about having biological children and there being greatness in our DNA. So right now that is the direction we're going to continue to believe for and continue to go for, and be open to whatever God has for us. So yeah. Thank you again.
Yeah, so second question is actually for David, and it is, David, how did you propose to Melody on her graduation night?
Yeah, it's kind of a fun question. Long story short, I've been teaching Melody kind of how to archery hunt. She's grown up, she was a hunter all of her life. I think she shot a deer actually before I did. But when we met, I was into archery hunting, and so we were practicing a lot, and we had some 3D targets, and so I thought it would be really fun to incorporate archery into the proposal, and I thought it would be really surprising. So both of our families actually were there before the graduation ceremony. We were just practicing archery, and I knew Melody at the time. She's really, really good now, but I knew that she wasn't super good at the time, so she probably would miss one of the targets. And then you have to go look for the arrows, And so lo and behold, she did. And I had planted an arrow underneath one of the targets so I could find her arrow, even though it wasn't actually her arrow. And so she was looking for her arrow, and I found kind of the fake arrow and got down on one knee and said, Melody, I found your arrow. And she kind of came back, and the ring was kind of on the end of the arrow, and that's when I popped the question, and she said yes. So yeah, that was kind of a fun way to do it.
Yeah, I will say I knew where he grabbed the arrow that he had planted beforehand under a different target was not my arrow. So I caught on to what he was doing fairly quickly because I knew that was not the direction my arrow had went in. Yeah. But it all worked out in the end. So the third question you guys had for us is, Melody, with attending BSSM, are you majoring in any specific area or program? And what is your overall experience with the school been? What has that experience been like? So as I'm in BSSM currently, I'll be finishing up my first year of it later in the winter here. But so when you actually enter this type of program, you are not majoring per se in anything. It's not like going to North Central or something like that, majoring in worship or music or anything like that. So I'm not majoring in anything. It's more of a very in-depth growth, spiritual growth, finding your identity in Christ, really building those foundations for just being, a believer, and really understanding kind of all the things as being a Christian that we believe and why we kind of believe them, but more at a deeper level. And we do go into things, prophetic gifts and that sort of thing too, and really just building relationship. It's a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed it. I've created some cool relationships. I've just had a lot of just tremendous spiritual growth, and I feel like it's just been a really great experience. It definitely has taken a big chunk of my time, which is okay for me in this season of my life right now. And I'm hoping that I can use a lot of what I've learned over the next weeks and months and even years, and just as I continue to unpack all of that. So thanks for asking that question. And then we only have a couple questions left. So the fourth question that was asked was, we mentioned that looking back at our first and second losses of Esther and Nehemiah, that we didn't think we let ourselves grieve enough. So if we could go back, what advice would we give ourselves in that moment? That's a great question. You can go first if you'd like.
Yeah, good question. Like Melody said, I think one of the most important things to remember, miscarriage kind of has a little bit of a stigma, and people are starting to open up more about it, which is really nice. And I think we need to continue to spearhead that, because having a miscarriage is losing a child, and you do have to treat it that way. You do have to go through the grief that way, even though it is a little bit different than maybe what we've experienced now. It is still a life. There is still a child that is in heaven awaiting you, and you do have to grieve that loss. So if I could go back, I wish we would have named them earlier, did some more memorial things that way to kind of honor them. I think for me, I'll just speak for myself, it was tempting just to, I don't want to use the word replace, but kind of just rush off and get pregnant again and then hope this pain would go away. And there's nothing wrong with getting pregnant fast after a miscarriage. I'm not saying that at all, but to really make sure that you are honoring that life that God made and that is in heaven right now, I think was the number one thing that I wish we would have done. We have done that since, like we alluded to, but that was something that, looking back, I wish we would have gone through more at the time.
Yep. I would say for me personally, things I wish that we maybe would have done differently is really just realize that when you go through something like this, and even what we've went through recently with Canaan, you don't move on from things like this. You may hear phrases from people of, well, eventually you'll move on, and when you lose a loved one, whatever it might be, things will get better and you'll just move on in life. And that is really actually a very false statement. You never actually move on. You move through it. Mm-hmm. That does not mean that you move on. I would say that I really didn't understand that you kind of grow around your grief versus your grief shrinking. So you actually literally become a changed person after becoming pregnant and having that child, or losing that child. And so when you kind of go through that process, you really do have to grieve. You really do have to go through it. And our human instinct is to run away because we don't want to have that pain, right? It's kind of like a protection mechanism. And so we don't want to have that pain in our life. So we choose to maybe stuff it away, not deal with it, just move on, right? That phrase, and get on with life, versus actually going through the process of grieving that child, honoring them like he talked about, and remembering the good things as well. And so that's something I wish I would have done differently, and I also wish I would have reached out more and actually found a support group earlier, and actually done some counseling and actually been taught how to grieve, because in our culture we're really not taught to grieve, and there's not really a lot of support around that because people just don't know how to. And so that's probably a really big thing that I wish we maybe would have done earlier, and I wish that people realized more when they go through something like this, like it is good to have resources, to have support, and even just being able to tell people your story and share and not feel like you have to keep it to yourself if that's not your personality. But yeah, that's what I would say. So great question. And then our last question that we have is, David, you said that you were a little tired of being told sorry from people as you and Melody grieve the loss of Canaan. What's the best way people can support you as you continue the grieving process?
Yeah, I'm really glad someone asked that question, because it's a really good question for people that are trying to support us or other people going through similar situations. And first off, I'll say from my perspective, I'd rather hear sorry than nothing. But I think when I said that, what I really meant was, I don't necessarily need a pity party. That's not what I'm looking for. But what really does help me and what helps us, the biggest things are just, for example, today I received a text from a friend that just said, hey, thinking about you, praying for you, let me know if there's anything I can do. And just little things like that that acknowledge that we're still going through something hard is really, really helpful. And again, not in a pity party way, but just in a, hey, I'm here for you, I see you, I know this is still hard, and that's really supportive and helpful. And then secondly, and probably most importantly, honoring Canaan and honoring his life, because he is our son, and Melody is a mom, and I am a dad, and we will always be that. And I think we heard something at Faith's Lodge that really struck a chord in me, but it's really tragic when somebody dies. But people can actually die twice when you stop mentioning their name and stop honoring their life. And so that's probably my biggest anxiety about this whole thing, is that I just want to know that we as a family and that people supporting us are honoring Canaan. Don't be afraid to say his name, to bring him up, to honor who he is and who he was. And I think that's the biggest way you can support us from my perspective.
So yeah, and again, this, I'm gonna have a little bit different opinion because we grieve differently and we each need slightly different support. So I'll kind of share with you some of the things that help me. But I just wanted to say quickly that, maybe you're someone going through something like this and that is not what you find helpful. That's okay. We're all different. Just because we're suggesting certain things does not mean that you will maybe feel the same way going through something like this, and that's fine. But for me, sending encouraging texts, messages, even visits sometimes are really helpful. Just reaching out and just asking, hey, how are you doing today? Or how's your heart? Or even just saying, hey, I love you guys. That's really all we need. Just acknowledging that, hey, we're still going through this and we appreciate the support. We're not looking for a pity party. We're not the victims in this or anything, but we do believe in support, and especially with our families and everything, as we're kind of coming together and have done things to honor Canaan, which is really special. These are things that we're just going to continue to do every year for him because we are his parents, and just doing things that honor him is really supportive. And I also want to say, so that it doesn't come across as like you have to do this, we don't expect people who aren't very close to us or are not even like family to have to do that in a bunch of different ways. It really is as simple as saying, hey, we love you guys, and we remember Canaan, and remember that life and it's special, and it has to be just really simple. It doesn't have to be anything complicated. And I also would just say, I think sorry is just an automatic response. I totally would say that before any of this happened, probably a lot. We both probably did when other people would go through this. And so, I mean, we all say it without even thinking, and it's okay. Like David said, for us, it's better than saying nothing. Obviously, even though saying I'm sorry, obviously the other person didn't do anything to cause this. And so for me, it's more helpful to say, hey, I love you, or I'm sad that you're going through this, but how can I support you? And it's just really simple ways. And again, if you know someone that is going through this, just ask them, what can I do for you? Or what can I help you with? Or what do you need? And sometimes I might not even know what they need, but just that you're asking is showing that you care enough to ask how they're doing. And I think that's a really great step. So hopefully we answered your questions. If you have any more, or you are going through something like this and you want to personally message us, just let us know, and we'd love to connect with you. So thanks, guys.
Yeah, and another way real quickly that you can ask questions about us or any of the podcasts on Testimonies with Terry is, I believe, the hashtag AskTWT. And so some of you obviously figured that out and asked these questions, but you can continue to do so. And don't forget to check out that podcast and all of the episodes that have came out and are coming out in the future. So thanks again, guys.
See ya.
Bye.